The following videos are from WriteBrightStation.com. Please note, the writing packets used in each video are only available for those with a membership. For the free printables for this lesson, go to WriteBrightStation.com. From the home page, choose the Assess tab. On the left Assessment menu, go down to Core Knowledge. Select your grade level and select the lesson. The lesson can be printed from this site. Talk to your principal about a site license for your school. Today's lesson is titled Thanksgiving Feast. Before reading the passage, you always want to start by taking a look at the writing instructions. Today, the prompt says, after reading Thanksgiving Feast, think about the similarities and differences between the food eaten at the first Thanksgiving and today's Thanksgiving. Write an essay to compare and contrast the food at the first and present Thanksgivings. Use information from the passage to support your answer. Follow along as I read Thanksgiving Feast. For many Americans, the Thanksgiving meal includes seasonal dishes such as roast turkey with stuffing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. The holiday feast dates back to November 1621, when the newly arrived Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Indians gathered at Plymouth for an autumn harvest celebration, an event regarded as America's first Thanksgiving. But what was really on the menu at the famous banquet, and which of today's time-honored favorites didn't earn a place at the table until later in the holiday's 400-year history? Turkey. While no record exists of the exact bill of fare, the Pilgrim chronicler Edward Winslow noted in his journal that the colony's governor, William Bradford, sent 4 men on a fowling mission in preparation for the 3-day event. Fowl are birds used for food. Wild, but not domestic, turkey was indeed plentiful in the region and a common food source for both English settlers and Native Americans. But it is just as likely that the fowling party returned with other birds we know the colonists regularly consumed, such as ducks, geese, and swans. Instead of bread-based stuffing like we use, herbs, onions, or nuts might have been added to the birds for extra flavor. Turkey or no turkey, the first Thanksgiving attendees almost certainly got their fill of meat. Winslow wrote that the Wampanoag guest arrived with an offering of 5 deer. Culinary historians speculate that the deer was roasted on a spit over a smoldering fire and that the colonists might have used some of the venison to whip up a hearty stew. Fruits and vegetables. The 1621 Thanksgiving celebration marked the Pilgrims' first autumn harvest, so it's likely that the colonists feasted on the bounty they had reaped with the help of their Native American neighbors. Local vegetables that likely appeared on the table included onions, beans, lettuce, spinach, cabbage, carrots, and perhaps peas. Corn, which records show was plentiful at the first harvest, might also have been served, but not in the way most people enjoy it now. In those days, the corn would have been removed from the cob and turned into cornmeal, which was then boiled and pounded into a thick corn mush or porridge that was occasionally sweetened with molasses. Fruits indigenous to the region included blueberries, plums, grapes, gooseberries, raspberries, and, of course, cranberries, which Native Americans ate and used as a natural dye. The Pilgrims might have been familiar with cranberries by the first Thanksgiving, but they would not have made sauces and relishes with the tart orbs. That's because the sacks of sugar that traveled across the Atlantic on the Mayflower were nearly or fully depleted by November 1621. Cooks didn't begin boiling cranberries with sugar and using the mixture as an accompaniment for meat until about 50 years later. Fish and shellfish. Culinary historians believe that much of the Thanksgiving meal consisted of seafood, which is often absent from today's menus. Mussels in particular were abundant in New England and could be easily harvested because they clung to the rocks along the shoreline. The colonists occasionally served mussels with curds, a dairy product with a similar consistency to cottage cheese. Lobster, bass, clams, and oysters might also have been part of the feast. Potatoes. Whether mashed or roasted, white or sweet, potatoes had no place at the first Thanksgiving. After encountering it in its native South America, the Spanish began introducing the potato to Europeans around 1570. But by the time the Pilgrims boarded the Mayflower, potatoes were not popular enough with the English to hitch a ride. New England's native inhabitants are known to have eaten other plant roots, such as Indian turnips, ground nuts, which they may or may not have brought to the party. Pumpkin pie. Both the Pilgrims and members of the Wampanoag tribe ate pumpkins and other squashes indigenous to New England, possibly even during the harvest festival. But the fledgling colony lacked the butter and wheat flour necessary for making a pie crust. Moreover, settlers hadn't yet constructed an oven for baking. According to some accounts, early English settlers in North America improvised by hollowing out pumpkins, filling the shells with milk, honey, and spices to make a custard, and then roasting the gourds whole in hot ashes. We've read the prompt, we've read the passage. What do we do next? Say, read the prompt again. The prompt says, after reading Thanksgiving feast, think about the similarities and differences between the food eaten at the first Thanksgiving and today's Thanksgiving. Write an essay to compare and contrast the food at the first and present Thanksgivings. Use information from the passage to support your answer. When you read the prompt again, the first thing you're looking for is the type of writing. What type of writing are we doing today? It doesn't say explain. It doesn't say persuade. It says write an essay to compare and contrast. When you are comparing and contrasting, you are informing or explaining. This is explanatory writing, also called expository or informative. When you read the prompt again, the second thing you're looking for is exactly what the prompt wants you to write. Today, you are comparing and contrasting the food at the first Thanksgiving and today's Thanksgiving. Let's take a look at the plan. We're going to start with our beginning, cat. The C stands for catch. You're catching the reader's attention. We are going to be using the announcement strategy. You might say, put on your apron as we head into the world of Thanksgiving. Let's blast off into the world of Thanksgiving. The spotlight today is on Thanksgiving. Grab your turkey leg because we're headed to Thanksgiving. On your paper, please indent and write a catch sentence now. The A in cat stands for asking. You can either ask a question, look at what the prompt is asking, or ask yourself the topic and use it in a sentence. Today, I've asked a question. Do you celebrate Thanksgiving? If you ask a question, it must end in a question mark. Please write your asking sentence. You may write a question now. Finally, the T stands for tell. Tell the reader what you're going to write about. Before writing your tell sentence, you always want to look at the prompt to make sure you know what you're writing about. It says to compare and contrast the food at the first and present Thanksgivings. I've written, there are similarities and differences between the food served at the first Thanksgiving and the food today. You are telling the reader that there are things that are similar and different from the two Thanksgivings. Write your tell sentence now. Looking back at the plan, you have finished your beginning. It's time to move on to your middle. You are going to be writing 2 middle paragraphs, one that tell how the 2 Thanksgivings are alike, and one that tells how the 2 Thanksgivings are different. We're going to start off with our AP, which is an author's purpose sentence. You have several choices to choose from. On your paper, you're going to need to skip a line, that means leave a blank line, go to a new line and indent, and you may say, this passage focuses on the first Thanksgiving. The contents of this passage teaches about the first Thanksgiving. Please go to a new line, indent, and write an author's purpose sentence now. Now remember, this first middle paragraph is going to be how they are alike. You want to start off with a sentence that says to the reader, hey, reader, I'm going to tell you things that were similar between our Thanksgiving and the first Thanksgiving. I've highlighted a sentence in green. There are many similarities between the first Thanksgiving and ours today. Please write something like this for your next sentence now. Now it's time for fact-finding. This is when we go into the passage and we underline the most important things. We are looking for things that are similar between the two Thanksgivings and things that are different. Notice that today I have done your fact-finding for you. These are the things that have been underlined. We are looking for similarities. Remember, you are not copying from the passage, you are paraphrasing. This means you are putting the information into your own words. Before we can write our first sentence, we need to put on a fact-finding phrase. Say fact-finding phrase. The fact-finding phrase says to the reader, "Hey, reader, I'm going to give you information that did not come out of my brain. It came from something that I read." You are crediting the source. For your fact-finding phrase, where these X's are, you can replace the X with the passage, source, text, selection, article. All of these words are interchangeable. They're talking about what you've read. You might say, according to the passage, the article reports that. The passage emphasizes that. Please write a fact-finding phrase now. Going back to the article, one of the similarities between today's Thanksgiving and the first Thanksgiving is turkey. While there's not a historical count of turkey, there is an account that these men were sent off hunting birds. They also know that turkey was something that was in that area, so more than likely there was turkey at the first Thanksgiving. You need to write at least 2 sentences explaining how turkey was a similarity between the first Thanksgiving and today's. You might mention how they went out hunting for their turkey, whereas today most people buy it at the grocery store. Do this now. Doing some more fact-finding, go under fruits and vegetables. There are some fruits and vegetables that were served at the first Thanksgiving that we also have today. Write a couple sentences explaining how vegetables were a similarity and maybe give examples of some of the vegetables. Do this now. Fruits were also something that we had today and they had back then. Cranberries sauce is what's found on our table, whereas we know they did not have cranberries. So this could actually be a difference if you want to save this one for the differences paragraph. We did have some similar fruits, but fruits aren't necessarily a highlight at a Thanksgiving table typically. Moving down, fish and shellfish is definitely a difference. Potatoes is a difference. Pumpkin pie is a difference. Now, it was a similarity that we both ate pumpkins, but they prepared theirs in a different way. We are now ready to write our differences. On your paper, you're going to want to skip a line, go to a new line, and indent. And you're going to want to start off with a sentence that lets the reader know that the paragraph you are about to write is on the differences. You don't want to say, this paragraph is about differences. Say something like what's here in green. Many differences are found between today's Thanksgiving and the first. Do this now. Going back to our passage, let's do some fact-finding. We've already talked about how turkey was a similarity. Under turkey, it talks about how they had deer. This was a difference that you might want to mention. How the Indians brought 5 deer. We typically don't see deer at our Thanksgiving table. You can mention the cranberry sauce, how they didn't have the sugar and the procedure of making cranberry sauce had not yet been invented. So that was not something at their table. You'll definitely want to talk about the fish and the shellfish. They lived on the coast, and so that was one of their main food sources, whereas that's not traditionally found at our Thanksgiving tables today. Potatoes is a huge hit for Thanksgiving today, but they didn't have potatoes. Potatoes had not been brought over. They weren't popular yet in England, and so they did not have them here in America. Finally, you can mention pumpkin pie. They did not have the ovens. They did not have the things necessary to make the crust. So while they had pumpkins, pumpkin pie was not something that was at their table. Please write your differences paragraph. You should have 6, 7, 8 sentences in that paragraph. Make sure you are paraphrasing and not copying from the text. Do this now. Going back to the plan, you've written a beginning and a middle, and it's time for the ending. TERP, transition, recap, retell, and punch. The transition can be chosen from this list. Please go to a new line, skip a line, go to a new line and indent, and write a transition word now. The first R is for recap. I've written, as you can see, Thanksgiving continues to be a tradition in America. Right after your transition word, finish that sentence with a recap. Do this now. The second R is to retell. Retell a main point, or what you're writing about. I've said there are many similarities and differences found between the first celebration and today. Please write your retell sentence explicitly stating that there are similarities and differences. Do this now. And the final thing on the plan is the P for punch. You want to punch the reader with a powerful ending. I've written, Thanksgiving remains a wonderful celebration, but something tells me the first celebration had no mention of Black Friday sales. So this punch had a little bit of humor in the ending. Please write your punch, and then your essay's complete. Great job! Visit writebrightstation.com for more lessons.